This is You Own It with Jerry Thompson. Welcome to the 14th podcast we're doing. It is early July. Sorry, I'm about a week late this month because the July 3rd, 4th weekend fell on a Thursday, Friday. And around here in East Aurora, New York, they celebrate the 4th. The fireworks are on the 3rd, the night before, and it's quite a big thing. So it extends the holiday kind of half a day in the 3rd to the 4th through the weekend, which makes for oftentimes a quiet weekend for me. I got a couple listings, but wasn't particularly busy all over those 4 or 5 days. So today what I want to talk about is a little bit about functionally what happens once you've decided, you've interviewed an agent now, you've decided you're going to list the house with the agent. What kind of are the next steps? Because oftentimes people, I think the perception is, well, I just list with this agent, and then everything kind of just, it's pretty easy for the agent now that the listing's done. They got the listing, I gave them the listing, and so they're off and running. And it's just the beginning of the work. And I always say a lot of times, if you want to functionally look for the measure of the agent that you're going to hire, ask them in the interview what they do once they get the listing. And you'll hear in this podcast kind of a lot of the different options. So the first thing you're going to do is right before you do listing paperwork is you're going to go through the agent's CMA. A CMA is what's called a Comparative Market Analysis. We've talked about it before. And it should give you addresses, locations. It should give you houses, times on the market, what's sold, list price, sale price, and the agent and you should come up with a conclusion based on the data, not based on what you think your house is worth, not based on what your gut feel is, but the data. And then you also should come up with a market strategy. So for example, this one I'm looking at here, there was a house that was on the market 86 days, and there's most of them. There's a 79, a 7, a 9, a 7, a 45, a 7, a 13, an 86, an 8, 25, and a 5. And I can tell you the 79, the 45, and the 86, all of them came down in price. The ones that were on the market shorter time sold it at a higher price than their list price. So strategy makes a difference. And you have to determine as a seller how long you want to be on the market. And do you want to take the hot, if you remember, hot, medium, cold strategy. Cold strategy is you price it really high, and then you hope somebody makes you a dumb offer because they don't know anything about the market. And by the way, today with the internet, people don't make dumb offers. They research before they make a purchase. And then you negotiate your way down till you get a result. But that cold pricing strategy often leads to a lingering property on the market, one that's on for a long time. And ultimately, in my experience, most of those properties sell for less than the hot properties, which are those that are priced almost too low. And that creates a feeding frenzy in a very short window and multiple offers. And then that seller is selecting offers that are way over list price or over list price. And they're making decisions based on the terms. Do I want to take $550 because it's cash, or do I want to take $575 with a VA financing or FHA financing or conventional financing? And do I have an appraisal guarantee on that? Do I have a home inspection on that higher number? If you take the hot, lower price strategy based on these comparables, you'll find short time on the market, competitive market. You take the cold strategy, you'll find long time on the market, an occasional showing, negotiating down. And then there's kind of in the middle, which in theory is the way everything should work, where you kind of price it around what you're hoping to get, and then just decide the minutia of, do I go a little lower than what I'm hoping to get? Do I go a little higher than what I'm hoping to get? If you go higher than what you're hoping to get, often that leads to the cold strategy. So often in today's market right now, at least in Buffalo, Western New York region, we're still in a very strong seller's market. So the hot to medium range is usually the best range. Another nice analogy of pricing I always like to use is like the old bell curve in high school. Well, they used to have a bell curve. Do they still have it now where, everybody, you just know on a test, it's going to be 20% of the people are going to get very poor grades, 20% of the people are going to get very high grades, and the rest end up in the middle. If you look at your house, compare it to others, look at the ones in the middle. If you look at the 2% that went very high and the 2% that went very low, It's not really giving you a good picture of what the average is occurring in your market. And then make a little fluctuation in your pricing strategy from there. So once you and the agent you've decided to hire have agreed to do that, let me kind of tell you what's going to happen next. The agent's going to sit down with you, or they're going to email you a whole bunch of forms. The forms are going to include a listing agreement, multiple listing agreement. That's where the commission agreement is. That says how much you're paying the listing agent, what you are offering to a buyer's agent. And there's going to be an agency disclosure, tells you the relationship you're going to have with that agent. And are they working as a seller's agent only? Do they offer dual agency? If they do, have a conversation with them. What happens if that occurs? Dual agencies where an agent has fundamentally, the agent themselves has a direct conflict in a lot of ways because they have a buyer's agency and a seller's agency relationship, meaning they've got your listing agreement, they've promised to represent you, they have a buyer's agency agreement, they promise to represent the buyer. And what happens in that circumstance? How is that agent going to deal with you on that? That's a whole podcast, but just ask those questions to an agent when you're filling out the agency disclosure. And then there's a little bit more common, which is what's called designated agency, where I may have a listing and somebody else from Central 21 Northeast wants to sell it, and they have a buyer's agency agreement with that buyer. I and that individual agent can each represent our own parties, but our broker, Jim D'Amico, has a dual agency, a little bit of dual agency. It needs to be disclosed. So that's the agency form. The other form is what's called fair housing. Fair housing form, we disclose in New York State to everybody that is going in the house. There's a display when somebody walks into any house. It says that we abide by all fair housing rules, regulations, and laws. And you as a seller are going to acknowledge that. And it's funny, I've had sellers say to me, but what does this mean? Does it mean I can't choose my buyer? And I say, yes. It means that you should take the buyer that's offering the best price. This is a job interview. When you're looking for a buyer or a house, you can't make the decision as to who the buyer is based on any of the factors that fair housing requires you to manage: race, creed, color, sex, religion, sexual preference, marital status, any of that stuff, family size. That shouldn't factor in the decision at all. And the fair housing form simply says to the seller, you're signing this because I'm telling you that better not, you can't allow that to factor. In the old days of real estate, people used to write these love letters. Oh, and sellers would go, oh, this is such a cute young couple, I want to sell it to them. No, not if they're not the highest offer, not if they're the best terms, not if they're the best price. Make a decision, treat it as a business decision when you sell your house, just so you know. And fair housing is a great time to have that conversation. This is a business decision. It's not an emotional decision. I know it can be hard. People have memories in their house. They've been there for a long time. But the best thing I can tell you is, in my experience, often the guy that seems the nicest when they're buying your house at the beginning can sometimes turns out to be the biggest jackass at the end. And the people that were rough at the beginning can turn out to be the nicest people you've ever met at the end. You don't know who anybody really is when they're writing up an offer and trying to buy your house. All you know is what's in writing. You don't know who they are as people. All you know is what's in writing. And I learned that a long time ago. You can blow smoke at me all day long about, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Unless it's in writing, it doesn't mean anything to me. I've had people say that to me, like, oh, Jared, I can do cash, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I go, great, can you send over the proof of funds? And then they text me later, I'm cash, I'm not going to, blah, 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 blah. And then they call me later, I'm cash. And I go, it doesn't mean a thing until you show me where that cash is coming from. You show me the bank account, you attach it. People say, are you not listening to me? And I've said, it doesn't matter what you say. It only matters what you do and what you put in writing. Crucial things. So fair housing is a good time to talk to the agent about how you and the agent are going to work together to make sure you're ensuring you're following all fair housing protocols and procedures. I don't tell the seller fundamentally anything about the buyer. Even if I know, they hear nothing. They hear, what's the price? What's the deposit? Where are they getting the money? When are they closing? Are there any inspections? What kind of financing? Any additional items in the contract that they're asking for? How much is the buyer's agent expecting to be compensated? What does the seller's net mean? and then ask them to pick the best offer. The names fundamentally are not involved. Property condition disclosure. You're going to sign a form that's between 5 and 6 pages long. We're getting a new one now that's coming out that's adding a couple extra things. And that form is where you're going to tell everybody what you know about the house, the history of the house, how old is the roof. And it also gives you a place to elaborate. And sellers will often ask me, well, what's this form? It's best if you have something you're worried about. Like, oh, I get a trickle of water in the corner of my basement that runs to my floor drain every spring when the snow thaws. And I have to shovel my back roof because I get ice damming if I don't do it in a heavy snowstorm. It is best to put that in the disclosure so that the buyers know what they're getting. It avoids all sorts of problems and complications later on. If there's even, something, when in doubt, disclose is the best rule of thumb. If you have no doubt, you're like, my house is in great shape, my furnace is good, my air conditioning is good, I never get water in the basement, my roof is good, I don't have leaking, don't have any plumbing issues, everything's A+, then everything should be no. It's when you have a question, and if you start to have a question like, 2 years ago, my sump pump failed and I got 6 inches of water in my basement. I came home, I found it, I drained the basement, I've since added a water battery backup and a sump pump on it. It may not hurt to say, if the sump pump fails, we got 6 inches of water 2 years ago. Let me tell you what we did. This should never happen again. We have a new backup. Because honesty is the best policy, and it lets a buyer feel comfortable that you're treating them well in the transaction by telling them what you think. And so when in doubt, disclose. And then there's going to be a listing attachment which tells the buyer a series of mostly mundane questions, mostly questions I can get from the public record. But is there public water? Is there public sewer? If there's a septic system, how many bedrooms is there a septic system? Whole podcast I'll do on septic systems one of these days because it's my biggest pet peeve because it's under the ground and the records aren't very good as to what's actually there. So you could have a perfectly good working septic system, but you can't say that it's so many bedrooms because the county doesn't have a record of it. How old's my roof? All that stuff is going to be put in there. Listing attachment. Actually, listing attachment doesn't have age of roof. Sorry, I got back up on property disclosure. But do I get a star exemption in my taxes? Do I get an exemption of any sort in my taxes? Things are important for the attorneys to know in the closing as to what they're looking for. And it actually becomes part of, in Western New York, I think it's page 2 or 3 of the contract. It gets filled out with those questions. And then if your house is built prior to 78, a lead-based paint writer. So you'll fill out all that paperwork with your agent. Any questions you have, if you're hiring an agent you know, love, and trust, they can go through and answer those questions in the forms. Shouldn't take very long. Then you're going to pick out your showing details. You're going to figure out from that agent when the house is being shown, what they recommend for showings, how you're going to be notified. Are you going to approve showings? Are you going to go away for the weekend? Are you going to have a lockbox on the house? Who is going to schedule all those showings? And I, for example, use a showing service, Showing Time. And I use that because it lets agents from an app at home set up an appointment on one of my listings for 2:00 tomorrow. Doesn't require my participation. It texts my sellers directly. My sellers then can approve or reject the appointment based on their request. And then if they approve it, me and the seller both have an app that shows us every showing every time. I know what's been approved. I know if they've disapproved. If there's a question, they can text me and I know exactly what's going on with the thing. And it also adds the extra added feature of helping me to collect feedback from agents, keeps track of all the showings in one location. And I'll show you later why that's important. Working out those details with that agent, how you're going to do the showings. You're going to then decide and I hope you ask these questions before you hire the agent. What do I need to do to set up the house so it's most presentable? And what services is the agent offering to help market the house and help present the house online? In my non-existent podcast, I would say top 10, there's a thing I say, top 10 things to know to verify that your agent's an idiot. If your agent doesn't set up a time for your house to be presented properly and to come in and do good photos of your house, if they just list your house and if they pull a cell phone out or they pull a camera out and say, okay, now that I've listed the house without any preparation on your part at all, and they're going to run around and take the pictures for the listing to get it up the next day, chances are good your agent's an idiot. The deal is how you present your house initially in the internet is the most important thing you can do. And when you're interviewing an agent, you should understand how they're going to present it. How are they doing photos? Are they going to be professional photos? Are they going to do drone? Are they going to do a floor plan? Are they going to do a 3D tour? Are they going to do a Zillow Premiere tour? Are they going to do a Zillow 3D tour? Are they going to do video? Are they going to do social media introductions? Are they going to do a reel or TikTok or something? And when they do those social media introductions, by the way, watch them. Go to their Facebook pages or whatever and check out the agent before you hire them. See how they present their houses, because there's a lot of differences in scale of how agents present a house when they go online. I personally am not a big fan of the new thing is the trend of I want to get viral attention. So the agents do wacky stuff or they tell jokes the whole thing or whatever. I always looked at it this way. My job is to get your house attention, not me. My job is to present the house in the most favorable fashion, not make fun of it. If you like that, it's okay. I don't mind. I could do that too, but it's not what I do. Other agents may tell you differently. Oh, it gets viral. It does this. Okay, great. Great. You need to understand who you're hiring before you hire them and what they're going to do. And so when you've worked out those details of showings, after the paperwork's done, I'll always say to people, let's look through the house. Okay, this is what I need you to do. Do this, move the boxes. I'm going to schedule a photo day. We're going to show up. We're going to spend 2 or 3 hours on showing day. And on that day, here's what I do. But these are other jobs that need to be done when the house goes on the market. So on the day of photo shoot day, and I did 2 this week, is I arrive at a house between 30 minutes and 10 minutes before the photographer. Depends on how the schedule looks. I show up at the house with, and many of you don't know this, but whenever an agent puts a listing in the multiple listing system, they have to fill out these forms or bring an iPad to fill out all these questions. Lot information, basement description, floor description, attic description, garage description, kitchen dining description, location. This is a condo one I'm using here, but additional features, atrium door, cedar closet, central vacuum system, handicap accessibility, additional exterior features, additional interior. It also requires room measurements, each room. Measure each room. If you look at listings online and there are no measurements, why not? It takes an agent that's decent 10 minutes to do the measurements. So what's crucial for the agent's job on photo day, I always say this, my crucial job on a photo day is to get into the house, measure everything, and go through each and every one of these check boxes so that when we go online, I don't have septic checked when it's public sewer, that I don't have, there's no kitchen appliances when you intend to include them all, that I don't include the draperies when you want to take your custom draperies. These are all questions that take a good hour for the agent to walk through the house, do the checklist, and then usually a few communications between them and the seller. While that's occurring, the photographer should be doing all of their photography work, or I always do it because it kind of does it all at once. And then right around the end of that, I put a sign up. We do a quick social media blurb, which is one of those reels. Hey, this house is coming tomorrow. It's important. Put the lockbox on, 2 copies of the key. One, as I always say, and it's funny, if you hire an agent and you decide to let a lockbox be put on your house and say, here's 1 copy of the key, be forewarned, the agent should have 2. And I'll tell you why. It's Saturday morning, you have 12 showings. You decide to take off to visit Lewiston, New York, which, by the way, I highly recommend. Great place to visit for that afternoon in Western New York. It's spectacular. Near the Niagara River, tons of things to do. Art Park, beautiful village. I have a subdivision there, Lewiston Heights Estates, which is spectacular. If you ever want to live there, I still have some lots left. But in any event, you take off for the afternoon to Lewiston, and your house is in Hamburg, New York, let's say, which is south. It's about 50 minutes from Lewiston. And Agent 1 shows the house at 10 a.m., and they have the key, and they leave the house, they turn the knob to lock the door, they put the lockbox thing down, and the keys in their pocket, and they get in their car, and they take off. Agent 2 shows up at 10:30. There's no key. If your agent has a backup key, it kind of idiot-proofs the house so that it allows that agent to take a phone call and in an emergency, get the backup key back to the house so that you don't lose 8 showings because you're out of reach. 2 keys. One in the agent's office, one in the lockbox. Best advice I can give you. 2 keys, backup always. Or a neighbor that you can reach at all times that has one. Or a hidden one somewhere near the house. You always need an emergency key. I've seen multiple situations where agents taken and put them in their pocket by mistake. They have dropped them in the winter and not been able to find them in the snowdrift. That's kind of misery. You're digging around snow. They've left them in the house and turned the knob, locked the door. Key was in the lockbox thing without thinking about it, inadvertently locked themselves out. It's have a couple copies of the key. So by the time that day is done, the house is getting ready to go on the market. Has to be, by the way, if there's any public marketing, according to MLS rules, either you need to give them authorization to have a slower term exclusive listing, or you have to have it once it's publicly marketed in the MLS within 24 hours. It's a good rule because honestly, I think it protects the sellers from people that might otherwise try to sell it without exposing it to the open market. Every house should go on the open market. There are a lot of buyers out there that even the best of agents don't know they exist. So set up the house, you do your photo shoot. Photo shoot's done. You leave for a couple hours while a photographer does some drones, some videos, does some floor plans. Your agent gets their full detail sheet done. You come home and there's a sign up and there's a lockbox. The house is prepared to be shown as soon as it hits the ML. It usually will take a photographer 12 to 24 hours to get the professional photography back to the agent. I always say next day. If you get photos done at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday, I had photos done 8 a.m. yesterday. Photos arrived 11 a.m. today. The house was in the ML by 1 o'clock, and it was all professionally done. Now the photos arrive, and the agent work begins. So before the listing goes on the market, often people go, well, I've got the listing. It's easy. You just flop some photos in there. You do this. No. The whole checklist. Then besides the whole checklist, if you have a good photographer or the agent has a good photographer, the photographer will normally give you between 80 and 100 quality shots. And the agent needs to decide what shots to use, what sequence to use, how to sequence them. It's again, another top 10 signs your agent's an idiot. If they don't care about your photos, they're an idiot. If they don't care about your description, they're an idiot. All of this detail. In a seller's market, by the way, idiots can get away with idiot things. In a market that's tough, they can. So the tougher the market, the harder it is on those that don't follow this type of detail. So when I get the photos back, and I'm sure I'm not the only agent that does this, I go through my ML checklist. I get everything there. I write my own description. One of the great things about AI now, by the way, is I used to love to write. I was a part-time English major in college until I realized that punctuation and actual complete sentences weren't my strong suit. So what I'll do is I'll write a complete description. Now I can copy it and paste right into ChatGPT and say, use this data, make it a real estate description. And it's much better at writing it than me. And then all I have to do is take out it extrapolates and it kind of lies. I've given it basic information. It's turned it into a nice description. And then I get to change it to make it more personalized for that house. So usually I'll take the photo sequence from 1 through 50, put the photos in, put this entire detail sheet of work in on the house, get the description written, ChatGPT it, and now I have a full multiple listing printout, but I don't go active yet. Now it requires a second set of eyes. So, and ask your agent, how do they do this? I'll usually run it up to, I have a staff in the office that works for the company, and I'll say, do me a favor, look at all of this and tell me if there's anything you see that I need to change. They'll usually change some of the description. They'll usually say, oh, look, I see you're calling this a 3-bedroom house. What's this 4th room that you've got a measurement for? Or there's a typo here, or you don't have the taxes in there verified. The agent should also then verify the property taxes to make sure they're presenting the correct tax amount. Another mistake that often happens with people that are not detailed oriented, if you hire somebody not detailed oriented, they can get tax bills to put the taxes online. And if you have like a 50% off disabled military active service veterans exemption in your town and you're paying $4,200 in taxes, I've seen houses sell where buyers think that they're paying $4,200 and then the mortgage denies them because the taxes are $74. Changes their payment. So it's crucial that your agent has the correct full tax amount when they present the listing in the ML. That's something else the agent does. They get the listing. What's the agent do? Verifies the taxes and presents the full taxation, because we don't know if the buyer is going to get the same benefits of a senior exemption, a veteran's exemption, a star exemption. We don't know that. So you don't want a buyer getting excited about a monthly payment and then realizing later they were qualified at the wrong taxation. I've seen it happen. Knock on wood, I've never had it happen to me. Actually, about the scariest thing I ever had happen is I had a buyer once that bought a house and everything said it was in East Aurora School District. And they went and Googled it and called me on a Saturday and said, oh my gosh, the house is in Iroquois. My kids will, I can't. We were like halfway through the transaction. There's panic. I called the attorney. I went and then I realized, wait a second, I have the tax records. Then I went and the taxes were paying at East Aurora School District. It's a very nerve-wracking thing to think, the other listing agent had presented it as being in the school district. And all of a sudden the buyer on one of these school district websites that was wrong was in a panic attack because the district was very important to them. They had children in that age group. And it was a scramble on Saturday. Me and their attorney, this is another reason why you don't want desk suckers. I literally drove into the office. The attorney drove into his. We both were looking up public records that we could get, and we figured it all out within an hour so the poor buyer could sleep that night and know that they got what they were promised. But a scary thing, even though we do all that verification, occasionally things come up. So your agent's going to verify all that stuff. And then once they've proofed and reproofed and proofed again, it's usually, in my book, it's usually a 2-hour process. You can't just hit the on button. So when you see those listings where there's no photos, terrible photos, corner photos, iPhone photos, Polaroid date, garbage photos where there's a date, I love those ones. I open up the listing and they're like, oh, look, this house has been on the market since May, because the photos say May 24th, May 24th, May 24th, May 24th. And generally speaking, when you see the dates in the photos, they're all garbage. Good rule of thumb. Photo where the agent hasn't taken the time to remove the date from the photo and has published them, traditionally those photos are garbage. The sign's installed, the lockbox on, your photos are up, on button gets hit. Now what happens? Well, showings can start. And let me show you what can happen. I'm just going to give you a good example. When showings start, what happens is an agent opens their phone and they hit an app on the buyer side. Because the moment it hits the multiple listing system, it gets distributed to major websites, close to about 850. You have to watch my listing marketing podcast, and I'll tell you more about that. But once it gets out there, a buyers in the marketplace will then contact their agent and want to set up an appointment. The agent in their back office or at home can literally open their showing time app, hit the button and say, I'd like to show it Saturday at 2:00. It sends that appointment to you. You confirm that showing and your agent gets a confirmation. And you think, well, what's my agent doing? Right? What are they doing? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing. Here's a listing that was a few weeks ago. The pink are people that decided not to make an offer. The green are people that decided to make an offer. It was over a 2-day window, 29 showings starting Saturday morning, Saturday and Sunday. The owner literally had to leave the house all day. There were so many showings. They were overlapping each other. And after we started to get those many showings, I knew really quickly that we were going to need multiple offers. So we decided to set a deadline on Monday. That entire weekend I spent with this sheet. Every time there was a showing, once it was done, I texted the agent that showed the house. Hey, just a reminder, there's a deadline on Monday. Do you think your buyer's making an offer? Yes or no? Everyone, 29 of them. We had a deadline on Monday night. And by Monday, I had, this sheet didn't look exactly like this. I had a scratched up sheet with a bunch of information, some yellows, some reds, and some greens. This is the final sheet. The yellows were people I had to follow up with. The greens were people I didn't have to follow up with. They were definitely making an offer. which, by the way, they were also getting emails from me telling them the offer was going to occur with the rules of our offer presentation. And then there was a series of yellows. Those are people that my buyers are thinking about if they may be in or out. Sunday, I followed up with every single yellow. I answered every single question. Monday morning, any agent that had not responded to me got another text before our deadline. Then you think, well, what's the agent doing? Well, spending hours answering questions for buyers and their agents about the process, how many offers you're expecting, and any specific questions about the house that you can't know from a checklist. Questions, every house, I always say, the first showing, I don't know very much about the house. By the 25th showing, I have had a lot of questions that I wouldn't have thought to answer that I learned. Till you get to the point where you know the house like the back of your hand. You know, why is there that stain on the back patio? Oh, who spilled what in 2004? Why is there a crack in the left basement wall that was repaired? Who did it? When did they do it? What type of company is there? Is there a warranty? These are all things that over time, over a 2-3 day window, you're constantly communicating with the seller and the agents to learn, because you're learning as they ask. As people object or question things about a house, you learn, you get better in presenting it. Just do, it's the nature of it. And then I make sure, or what I always say you want to do when there's going to be a multiple offer, and this is another question you have, no matter who you hire. Did they clear the decks, I always say. Did your agent notify everyone that you're getting multiple offers, or how many offers you're expecting, when you're expecting them, what the deadline is going to be, and have they cleared the field so that you know when you get your offers, your yes or no from everybody? You know there's not going to be somebody that shows up at 3 that looked at the house on Saturday because they didn't hear from the listing agent. I had one the other day. I was clearing the decks. I had a multiple offer on some land. And in this one, we decided to set a deadline a couple weeks in advance because we knew there was going to be multiple offers, and we wanted to make sure that we had 2 weekends of time for people to see the lot, because one weekend rains on vacant land, everybody can't get out to see it. So, and I was clearing the decks before a deadline at noon on Tuesday. We had already had 3 offers. And at 11:30, I was just double checking with a yellow, with somebody that had not said they were making an offer, or not said they weren't. They were thinking about it. And I texted that agent and I got, oh my gosh, I thought the deadline was Wednesday. It happens. People, you put it in your calendar, you put it the wrong day. So it's important for you as a seller to know that you have an agent that not only is making you comfortable in your direct communication with them, but is doing the legwork behind the scenes. Having a listing is not putting a sign up and going to bed at night and waiting for contracts to roll in. It is an active, energetic task constantly for a window of 4 or 5 days. I put a house in the market today, I will do nothing but worry about that house and what's going to happen with that house and how I'm going to maximize the value for my seller on that house until we get our offers and the deal is done. And that's just the beginning of the deal, is the contract. Then what happens is you figure out if you're going to set a deadline, you're going to hear multiple offers. Are you going to deal with escalation clauses, or you are not going to deal with escalation clauses? You're going to look for highest and best. Are you going to define some terms up front, like you don't want to, the land I sold was the seller didn't want to clean out some stuff out of an old cottage. So we set those terms up front. The seller wants an as-is deal. You take it, you clean out the stuff out of the cottage. The seller's not going to do it. We set those rules up front. We told everybody we got the offers. And then everybody that came in to make an offer wrote up this form. In Erie County, we have this form that is, it's a pretty detailed form. It's 13 pages for the contract. Some of the disclosures the seller signed at the beginning: fair housing disclosure, agency disclosure, agricultural district writer, because this particular thing was in an agricultural district. Oh, there's a survey attached because we provided the survey for the buyer so they knew what they were. The tax receipts, so the buyer had the tax receipts available. Proof of the buyer's funds. What the buyer's agent was expecting for compensation. All of that in that many pages. And the listing agent, if you have multiple offers, for example, if you remember my green and red example a while ago, I think there were like 15 or 16 offers on that property. All of them came in, and then I had to sit down at my desk for about an hour and go through each and every one. What's the price? What's the deposit? How are they getting the money? Are there going to be any inspections, yes or no? Any additional conditions, inclusions, or exclusions? How much is the buyer's agent getting? When are they going to close? The most important details of the contract. I had to highlight them all. I had to sort them into a big stack of offers from low to high because I have to present them all. I have to present them all. If you present an offer in writing to your listing agent, your agent submitted one, it gets presented. The seller hears it. Sometimes it's downright, only gets 2 seconds of time. Here are the offers. We have 12. Every other offer is over 400. Here's the one for 290. The seller says, I don't want to hear anymore. Okay, we're done. It gets presented though. If you take the time and energy to get that contract in writing, your offer gets presented. So then what does the listing do? Stack them all up in sequence, usually meets with the seller. Zoom, call, text, or not text is not advisable. Zoom call, face-to-face, to discuss the offer sequencing and to look very seriously at the top three to determine best price, best terms, what fits their personality from that perspective, and which one do they want to take. And the seller makes a decision to take it. And then what the next steps a listing agent should do, at least this is what I do, and I think it makes sense. You have to remember there are 14 people that lost when there's 15 offers. Those 14 people, whether or not the offer's low, good, bad, close, not close, deserve your respect because they spent an hour of their life looking at the house, probably 2 or 3 nights tossing and turning about whether or not they're going to make an offer, discussing it with their agent, having their agent run the comparables, getting their pre-approvals in order, writing up the contract, signing it, submitting it, and sitting there getting their hopes up to buy a house. And this is another, sorry if I'm in an ornery mood today, it's another pet peeve of mine is when 15 or 16 people submit offers and you're representing a buyer and you submit an offer to a listing agent and then you don't hear anything. Offers were due at 5 o'clock. You text the agent. When is the seller going to make a decision? Silence, 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 silence. Then maybe, if you're lucky, the next day, they send out a mass email. If you didn't hear from me last night, you lost. Thanks for the offer. And the 15 people that lost, or the 14 people that lost 15, one of the things that I think a good listing agent always should do is take the time to call all of the agents that made their offers, answer questions, and say, thank you very much for the offer you lost. And there should be a sequence to that. So the best sequence, I always follow the best sequence because I always want to make sure that I don't get a scenario where when I call all the people that lost, if I call the winner first and I call the people that lost and all of a sudden I call second place and they go, yeah, wait, hold on, my buyer just went up 50 grand. Now I've already got somebody that's really excited about something and now I've got to present that new 50 grand offer to the seller and I've got a complication. So normally what I'll start with is the low. I'll call all the way through to the second or third place. And then only after everybody's out, they know it, then I call the winner. And you say, well, why do you do that? Because they spent 2 hours or 3 hours of their life, besides the anxiety and the worry, they deserve that respect. And honestly, if it's Sunday night at 8 o'clock, I just got done with the seller, seller's made a decision, signed another contract, it takes me like 40 minutes to make 15 calls. Agents that don't, I just think are just half-assing it. I hate people that half-ass stuff in this business. And I think as a seller, it's always a good idea when you interview, to find out what sort of stuff people are made of. By the way, when I hire people to do stuff, I have tons of respect for people that return phone calls, for people that get back to me immediately, for people that follow up, for people that pat me on the back and help me with my concerns when I'm worried about it within a reasonable time frame. And I don't hire people that I feel are more concerned about just getting the job, making the profit than they are me. I want to hire people that worry about me. And a good listing agent, I think we talked about it last time, they're relentless on your behalf. They're not only relentless on your behalf, they are professional, they're courteous, they present your house very well, they help to calm your nerves in difficult times. And then on the flip side, they also treat the buyers of that are making offers with the respect that they're due, and I think it helps them generate more offers. I just do. There's nothing worse than a listing agent when you have a buyer that's very anxious sitting at home at 9 o'clock at night to submit an offer at 1 o'clock that ghosts you. You can't. There's nothing that makes the buyer feel better. I do this for a living. I'm used to that anxiety. But a buyer making an offer, I just made an offer on a property last week for a second place that my wife and I were thinking of getting, and we lost. And the listing agent, I can't say enough good things about. We submitted an offer. He called me within an hour after the offers were submitted. He let me know that they were reevaluating. We were in the top 3, wanted to know whether or not we wanted to consider any different. We went for it. We really went for it, and we lost. And when we lost, that agent called me back within a reason. We waited about 2 hours for the seller to decide, called me back, told me how much they appreciated the efforts we had made, let me know that we would be in the mix if something fell through, but that we finished in second place. And it stunk that night, but I also knew I did the best that I felt comfortable doing for that particular property. I wasn't going to do any better, was not going to do any better, but it still hurt a little. That call from that agent meant something. So what I wanted to kind of get across to everybody today, there's a whole bunch of stuff a listing agent does, from photography to managing showings, to following up with agents, to answering questions, to providing feedback. That is besides the simplest rudimentary task, which is when somebody calls them on the sign and wants to see the house, showing and selling the house, which is what most sellers are hiring you to do in the first place. Fundamentally showing and selling the house because you're the best salesperson. That's why listing agent, hire a good salesperson as a listing agent. Hire somebody that's a good salesperson. All of that is a lot of hours of work. And that's besides the expenses of the professional photographer, buying the sign, buying the lockbox, paying the board dues, paying closing coordination or assistance, having a toolkit of trusted advisors that you work with, from estate salespeople to cleaning companies to attorneys to surveyors, people that you can reach out to help sellers in difficult and odd circumstances. This is all the work that is put into a listing. It is not just you sitting down and giving them, like, here you go, here's free money. It's all earned every dime. And if you don't feel it's earned, find an agent that you know will earn it. So thank you so much for watching episode 14 of You Own It. I don't know what I'm going to do episode 15, but I'll try to get it out earlier in August. Thanks again for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Own It. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast apps, and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and greatest. All of our social channels are clickable in the show notes as well. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, c21jerry.com. There you'll find more info on me as well as my latest listings for all of Western New York. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, through any big decision, you own it.